when I got out of military intelligence in the Army, I started a private investigation and security business. And right away, I started working a lot of child custody cases. And from working those child custody cases, I started to see what attorneys weren't doing. In other words, they weren't using evidence, even evidence that I was collecting that in other cases actually proved to be a benefit in the case. So I'm thinking, well, there's a disconnect here. And a lot of the cases are being decided basically by custody evaluations. That means psychologists are determining custody, not judges. Judges didn't want to make the decision because they can't get into the details of a family that has a
Right.
complex or high conflict case. So they would have a custody evaluator. Well, that custody evaluator is only as good as the information that they have. And so the psychological testing is nothing but a snapshot of what people's lives are. And so what did I do? I jumped in there with evidence, and having that evidence was superseding anything that the custody evaluators could come up with. Evidence really matters in the justice system if it's prepared properly. Take a criminal case. It's all about evidence. A personal injury case. It's all, he ran the red light, or she ran the red light, or the plane crashed, or whatever. It's all about evidence. Why isn't child custody about evidence? It's not, until I get involved. I see this all the time. I mean, I work cases and I'm thinking, why didn't they do a hair follicle drug test on this person? It's so obvious that this person should have had that. And it didn't get done. Or the lawyer says, well, if we do that, then you have to take the test too. And I'm like, of course. Well, then what's good for the goose is good for the gander. But of course, everyone gets tested. But if there's somebody that's impaired all the time with their children, I think that's relevant to the stability of the children and the parent.
Seems to be your specialty in getting the right evidence. A lot of times these cases are he said, she said. So you mentioned a hair follicle test. What other evidence would you say is important in child custody disputes? You mentioned text messages, emails.
Absolutely. So that's obviously police records would be relevant. And I was working a case in Florida, and it's a law that you have to have a fence around the pool. And there was no fence around the pool. So I had my client take big pictures of the fence around the pool. We made a big deal out of it because the child's so small. And there was a lot of swimming going on. I want to teach my kids to swim. That's fine, but you need a fence around your pool. You got big dogs, knock the poor child in the pool. There's imminent danger that comes to mind in some of these things, or any activities that you're going to have your children involved in, and that can be dangerous. I mean, I have horses, but horses are dangerous.
They can be. Sure.
Yeah. I mean, I watched a little girl fall off a horse with her mother one day. And this is a very tall horse. It was nice that it was soft ground when she landed on her head, so with no helmet. So there's judgment calls here sometimes, that, so putting your children in jeopardy with bad decision making, or imminent danger, which is usually what the law is, imminent danger, can change the outcome of a custody case based on putting those children in danger. But to answer your question, proving drugs and alcohol and things like that, I mean, I've coached my clients to hire investigators to go through trash, do surveillance, whatever it takes to prove what's going on here. If you're at Chuck E. Cheese's drinking 4 pitchers of beer, or drinking margaritas after the Little League game and carting those kids around, that's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And so these are things that lawyers don't think that way because they're not investigators. And that's the gap in their education for the most part. They're not trained psychologists. So we have a system here, Bianca, and this is one of the points I like to make to people. And that is, when you go to an attorney, they may know the child custody game really well, but are they trained in personality disorders? Probably not. Are they trained in gathering evidence? No, they don't do that in law school. They only talk about the admissibility of evidence, but not how to collect it. They have to
Uh-huh.
leave their office. See, the lawyer's not going to leave their office, okay, to go out and do what I did one day. I had someone call me, and I wanted to prove a parent had been drinking. I went to their home. It was gated community. I thought, boy, it's going to be difficult to empty the trash here and prove the alcohol problem. So I looked for the closest grocery store, and we subpoenaed the food reward card and found out the mother was drinking 3 liters of vodka a week after she had stated in court she hadn't drank in 6 months. That's creativity and imagination, and this is what changes these cases. And so that's the reason why evidence is so important. And if you don't have any and there's not any out there, well, then it saves you money too, because then you're basically saying, well, this parent's not that bad. So there's no reason to, spend 20 grand on a lawyer fighting over something that's, small, then you actually saved yourself some money because you don't really have a case. So
Okay.
the evidence determines whether or not you have one. But what I found is a lot of these states are doing the presumption of equal access. And so now evidence is still important, because if we're starting off with equal footing, then and you have a parent that really doesn't have the skill set to have the children 50% of the time, then you're going to have to put some evidence together to be able to rock that boat